and welcome to another episode of GeekOutdoors.com. Now that the Google I/O 2016 has wrapped up, let's go over and talk about some of the things that I found really interesting. Now, if you head to the Google Developers YouTube channel, you'll be able to see all the videos. And the main one I'm going to be talking about is actually the actual main intro or actual conference, the keynote, which is this one. It's like 2 hours and 8 minutes. Now, what's great about the Google I/O YouTube channel is if you really want to get into all the details, they have a lot of long sessions outside of the main keynote. If you, as you see, there's so many of them, and there's a few that I'm going to be looking at, but they're pretty long, but they're very, very in depth. So just remember that the Google I/O, it's really meant for the developers, you know. And as the years go by, it is they're also doing more things for the public, but it is primarily for the developers, and that's why it's on the Google Developers YouTube channel. So, with that being said, let's head straight to the actual keynote itself. And I'm not going to go through the whole keynote because obviously you could just go and watch it. So I'm just going to go over some of the highlights. And the actual keynote started off with the current CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai. So the main crux of what they're talking about at the very beginning for most of the actual conference at the beginning is actually voice recognition. How much of a leader Google is in that area, and also how this leads into their whole, pretty much the majority of their conference is that, their contextual prowess, their ability to understand what people are really looking for. So that integrates really well into what Google is primarily all about, which is search, and more now search AI and intelligence. And so as you go through this, they talk a lot about that. How Google is leading the charge, how they're innovating a lot of areas when it comes to actual contextual research and AI and understanding what real humans are actually looking for, which is really cool, but at the same time, it's kind of scary in how much companies like Google, and every company is data driven, by the way, it's not just Google, but how they're using it in many different ways. Okay, so as you go through this, they talk about that pretty heavily, but where it kind of like starts getting into how Google is going to do this is they talk about two primary products at the beginning. They're primarily apps. That's what they are. One of them is Allo, and it is basically a messaging app. At this point, I'm not really sure how this is really beneficial or replacing my current app. There's a lot of emojis there and so forth, but from what I could see, most of it is like, how once again Google is using their contextual search AI intelligence to make this whole experience more seamless, and more tailored towards you. Now, after that, they got into something, another app, and that was um, Allo. And let me see if I can get there real quick. And Allo is basically their video app. And once again, I don't really see where they're kind of heading with this because there's so many um, messaging and apps, video apps available today. So I'm not really sure what the benefit of having another messaging and video app is. So like apparently right here, he's showing an example of him talking to his $2 on how easy it is to use this dual video app versus whatever app that is currently on your phone right now. And Google has been pushing towards this, mainly with their Google Hangouts app as well. And so this is meant to be more seamless, and they talk about how easy it is, and also once again, they talk about the contextual AI and also the security behind all of this. Um, I'm not sure how this is going to play out. These two apps will be available not only on Android but also iOS. So we'll really see how this pans out. I mean, and this has been in sci-fi movies a very long time. Of people talking on their phones through video cameras, video phones, which was way back when I remember like Blade Runner. but it hasn't really become mainstream, even up to this day. But Google, companies like Google, Apple, all these big companies, they're not dumb. They really know where things are heading, with all the data that they're collecting and so forth. And so these, so far, I don't see them as being important, but they might really be important in the future. Now, going forward, the one area that I was really, really interested in, and I think most people who are watching this channel are into, is basically Android. So here they talk about Android N, and right off the bat, the first thing they talk about is the performance, what improvements that they made. And the first thing they talk about is the Android N JIT compiler. And basically they've made a lot of improvements to the compiler in compiling the code. And so this is going to lead to things such as this: faster app installation, also, background updates is going to be better with background updates, so you don't have to see that screen where it's updating all of it, updating all your apps as much. And also at the same time, they focus heavily on security, primarily in the Google Play Store. They're really touting how many apps that they actually go through and test every single day, and it's in the millions upon billions. And so, this is more like, to me, it's more about the marketing aspect of it, because everybody knows security is important. And if you're programming, you're doing anything of this scale, software development, security is always going to be important. But a lot of people are very concerned about it, and a lot of people are not familiar with how security works in the technology realm. So I really think this here more is not really geared towards the developers. It's more geared towards just the mass consumers who are watching this, who are worried about whether or not downloading apps through the Google Play Store is safe. So right here, they talk about their safety net initiative, and I think at some point here they talk about how many billions of people that they're actually watching over in terms of their apps and stuff. And now, we get to stuff that is really cool. Here they talk about the multi-window, just briefly, and that, yeah, right here. And so it's more about something that's been available on other Android phones through their skins, such as the Samsung phones before. While you're really gonna have true multi-window, which is nice. And also, they also talk about the picture-in-picture feature, which is considered multi-window as well. Now, I think that's really cool. That's something that I could actually use, and I think that that's something that people would benefit from, especially with all the move towards big screens and so forth. Now, other than those features of Android, and the one that really, really got me pumped and excited is their Daydream, or in this case, it's their VR services, if this would actually play. So this is where I found the most excitement, this, because the whole industry, we're heading towards VR, and they've been talking about this, I think, maybe since the 70s or 60s and the 80s. And VR, it's primarily going to start in the tech, in the entertainment realm. That's where the technology is going to be used the most. But, you could easily see 10, 15, 20 years from now, we'll be wearing VR contacts. We'll be in a real matrix world. And so that's going to be something that is reality. So they're preparing for all of that. Google and many, many other companies are preparing for VR. And so that's what they talk about here in terms of how it's applicable, how it can be used right now. And of course, they're going to talk about entertainment first, because that's what most people, especially here in the US, that's what they actually look for, is entertainment. So with that being said, the only really main area that I want to focus on, it is really cool demo, and also some of the key um, features that they have, and the devices that they have ready. And so what this is called VR Daydream. And so your devices actually have to be physically, hardware wise, able to do this with a lot of sensors and the processing power. And Android or Google has already kind of started with this with their Project Tango tablet, which has a whole bunch of sensors that allow more VR related software to be put on there. And here they talk about their reference VR headsets, and also they're going to show this in a bit. and I didn't want to skip through this because I might skip through this part, which is really cool. But they also talk about their reference controller, and you're going to see this in a moment. So I think this was the most important part, the part that I found the most interesting in the whole uh, keynote is this VR experience. And so they've also talked about right there that little controller. And this one, this controller, it's very reminiscent of a lot of the new controllers now, specifically the Apple TV or even the Amazon controller for the Fire TV, and many other devices. Where they want to keep it extremely simple. And this is looks like it's going to integrate the simplicity of those controllers along with the usability of the Wii remote, as you see here with this VR demo, which is really cool to me. This is playing from a phone, but it's also optimized for Android TV as well. So this is a full-on VR experience. And this is something that will be standard in the future, or in the near future. And see, like there, that reminds me of the Nintendo Wii remote. And here the graphics, they look really nice and clean, and obviously it's going to get better, and it really depends on what type of material that you're displaying. But this is a very simple practical use of how this VR system might work. Obviously, you're going to have a VR headset, which they just briefly talked about with their reference headset. So that would look really, really cool. But these things will not be available till the fall of this year. And so there will be VR ready headsets provided by, the main manufacturers that you're familiar with, Samsung and, companies like Samsung and so forth. But also, they really want to talk about the gaming aspect as well. They talk about the big media aspect, which is Netflix, HBO, IMAX. So you're going to get like a whole theater experience, which is what most people will probably use VR for at the beginning, but they also get into the whole gaming aspect as well. So with other companies, such as Ubisoft or with EA, just the big companies, they're gonna be in this, So that's not gonna be anything surprising. So be prepared for a Call of Duty VR on your Android smartphones. And so yeah, I'm really excited about that. And there were a lot of other videos just on VR on the days following this. Those are specific to developers, and so I'm probably definitely gonna go watch those. But it's a lot of material, and that's probably where the most videos are for the Google I/O is within VR. That's outside of this keynote. So this is gonna be a really, really big thing, and I'm really excited to see where they go with this and how they execute it. So hopefully it'll be good. Probably not at the beginning. So the rest of the actual conference, they do talk about wearables, and primarily Android 2. I'm sorry, Android Wear 2.0, and how the biggest thing that they talk about here is actually you're going to be able to use your Android wearable without the use of your phone, without needing to pair it with your phone, which is nice. And they're also adding a lot of fitness elements on there as well, and more different clock faces. Okay, so not much really new and exciting there. And the final part of this keynote is for the developers, which is what Google I/O was initially. It was for the developers. And here they actually talk about their Android Studio IDE, which is their development environment, and how they've optimized it. They've done more things in terms of performance. Also, their emulation is a lot better. So if you're a developer, you're creating your app for multiple device screen sizes, their emulator is a lot faster, and they're also providing more tools built into Android Studio. So if you are a developer, this is a really interesting part. And also, like I said, there's lots of others Google I/O developer videos available on their YouTube channel as well. And so that is pretty much it for my rundown of the Google I/O 2016. You could also go to the Google developers website, and they don't have the recaps here yet, but this is if you want to know more about some of the changes that they're making right now or upcoming changes, such as the multi-window aspect, there's the coding part of it, how their media stack works, quicker booting, and so forth. And this is primarily for developers, but if you're interested in this stuff, go check it out. I think it's got a lot of information that is useful. Or um, I'm going to be coming here and watching these other videos, so these are the ones that are the meat of IO. This is for the developers. So these are really long videos, but it's got a lot of stuff. Like, look at that one, it's like 7 hours, I think. But the ones that I'm going to primarily be watching is the VR ones. And so if there's anything here that I find interesting, I'll make another video on those too. So um, if you watch the Google I/O, let me know your thoughts. What did you find interesting, or what did you find boring? Leave your comments and ideas below. Thanks for watching, and we will see you on another episode. Thanks for checking out this episode. And as always, if you like these videos, be sure to click on the subscribe button. And for full written content, audio content, and additional geek stuff, head over to geekoutdoors.com, and I'll see you outdoors on the very next episode.